You do not belong here, old woman. Your trembling hands cannot even tie a kimono properly. Let's see who ends up on the floor after 14 seconds. What did you say? Do you even realize who you are speaking to? I am the state champion, and you are just a miserable housewife who got lost. State champion. Interesting. Now tell me, Kyle, have you ever fought against a fifth-degree black belt who trained with the Gracie family in Brazil? Silence. Dead silence filled the room where just a moment ago loud laughter echoed. The most exciting part is yet to come. Stay tuned to find out how it all ended. Meanwhile, please give a like and subscribe so you do not miss out. The elite Iron Phoenix Martial Arts Academy in the very heart of Beverly Hills was a sanctuary for the chosen few. Marble floors, sparkling chandeliers, walls adorned with golden medals and trophies. This place exuded wealth and prestige. Here, children of Hollywood stars, heirs of oil tycoons, and young entrepreneurs from Silicon Valley came to train. Membership cost $10,000 per month, and the waiting list stretched for years. Meredith Collins stood at the entrance to this fortress of exclusivity, clutching a worn gym bag. Her faded jeans and simple white t-shirt looked absurd against the backdrop of gleaming sports cars parked outside. Bentley, Ferrari, Lamborghini. Each car worth more than she earned in several years working as a waitress. In a small cafe located in East Los Angeles, Meredith had a powerful reason to be there. A reason that weighed heavily on her heart every night, robbing her of sleep. A reason that compelled her to save every penny from her modest paycheck to pay for this one activity. 3 months earlier, her 17-year-old daughter Emma took her own life. She left behind a note containing only 3 words. They broke me. Emma was a gifted girl who earned a scholarship to a prestigious private school filled with wealthy children. Yet instead of opportunity, she found nothing but torment, humiliation, and social rejection. Her classmates bullied her because of her financial status, her lack of designer clothing, and because her mother worked as a waitress. They created online groups dedicated to belittling her, recorded videos of their cruelty, and spread damaging rumors. When Emma tried to learn martial arts to protect herself and joined a local jiu-jitsu club, the same affluent kids trained there and continued to harass her even on the mat. The coach, who received generous donations from their parents, ignored what was happening. Emma lasted for half a year, but eventually could not endure it any longer. Meredith discovered her daughter's diary among her belongings, where Emma detailed every insult, every taunt. One name appeared repeatedly: Kyle Sterling, the son of a media mogul who led the bullying both at school and in the sports club. He was handsome, popular, with flawless skills and an impressive collection. In the world of awards, he was a golden boy of the local martial arts community. Kyle trained right here at Iron Phoenix. Meredith spent weeks trying to figure out his schedule and used her last savings to buy a one-day membership. She had a plan she had been carefully crafting for 3 months ever since the day she found her daughter's body. The automatic doors slid open with a soft hiss, and Meredith stepped into the cool marble lobby. Behind the reception desk sat a young blonde woman with flawless makeup and a smile that instantly tightened when she took in Meredith's appearance. "Welcome to Iron Phoenix," the woman said, clearly struggling to maintain professional courtesy. "How can I help you?" "I signed up for a trial session. Meredith Collins," Meredith replied, pulling a crumpled payment receipt from her wallet. The woman scanned the computer screen and raised her eyebrows in surprise. "Ah, yes, found you. Although I must say our classes are quite intense. You might want to consider something more age-appropriate. We do have wonderful yoga groups for senior ladies." Meredith smiled. She was 43 years old, but years of standing on her feet and grueling shifts in a cafe had aged her. Gray strands mixed with chestnut hair, crow's feet framed her eyes, and her tired gaze made her look much older than she was. "Jiu-jitsu will be perfect," she said calmly. In the locker room, Meredith changed into an old white kimono she had bought from a secondhand store lay before her. The fabric was soft from numerous washes, worn in places but still clean. She carefully tied the white belt, the symbol of a beginner, and glanced at herself in the mirror. 18 years ago, she had been completely different. Youthful, driven, and talented. A promising athlete training in the finest gyms of Brazil, learning techniques from legendary masters. They called her the White Panther for her lightning-fast movements and deadly precision. Then came the tragic car accident. A concussion, broken bones, months in the hospital followed. When she physically recovered, her professional path was shattered. Sponsors disappeared and opportunities vanished. She had to return to America, working to support her newborn daughter who was left fatherless. For 18 years, she did not compete professionally but never stopped training entirely. Every day after her shift at the cafe, she came home and practiced techniques for an hour on a homemade dummy in the garage. Not for fame, but for her soul and to keep in shape. Emma often watched her, admiring her mother's grace. Yet Meredith never spoke of her past, ashamed of broken dreams. But now none of that mattered. Only justice for Emma was important. The training hall was vast. Mat tatamis stretched across hundreds of square meters. Mirrored walls reflected the daylight pouring through panoramic windows. Punching bags lined the walls. Dummies for practicing strikes, grappling mannequins, stands equipped with various gear. And everywhere around them were the young elite of Los Angeles. Guys and girls dressed in flawless kimonos adorned with embroidery and logos from expensive brands, wearing belts of different colors that revealed their skill level. They chatted about their sports cars, weekend plans in Miami, and recent splurges at the mall. Meredith recognized him immediately. Kyle Sterling stood at the center of the group, sharing a story that made everyone burst into laughter. 21 years old. Golden hair, a perfect smile, an athletic build. He wore the latest model kimono worth thousands of dollars, and the brown belt indicated a high degree of mastery. That very Kyle who had driven her daughter to take her own life. "Hey, look who showed up, Grandma," he said loudly, spotting Meredith. Lost? The aqua aerobics class is one floor above. His friends joined in with laughter. The girl in a pink kimono with a purple belt chimed in. "Seriously, lady, this is not the place for someone your age. You could get hurt here." "Just look at that kimono," the boy with the blue belt continued. "Looks like it was dug out of a dumpster. And those sneakers. Oh my, where did you even find them?" "At the flea market in Blush." Meredith silently moved to the edge of the tatami and began warming up. She remembered every word from Emma's journal. She recalled how her daughter had described exactly these moments. Public humiliation, mockery of her clothes, social rejection. "Mom, they mocked my sneakers, claiming, 'You wear shoes for the poor,'" Emma wrote. "Kyle said people like me do not belong among them and that I disgrace the entire gym just by being there." Coach David Harrison, a former professional fighter with tattoos on his arms and a scar across his cheek, entered the room and whistled to grab everyone's attention. "All right, folks, let's start the training session. We have guests today," he said, nodding toward Meredith. "Try not to kill the rookie on the first day." Kyle smirked. "Don't worry, Coach David, we will be gentle with the grandma." The next hour was a challenge. Meredith was made to train with the most aggressive partners. She was deliberately placed in humiliating situations, and every move she made was constantly criticized. When she tried to perform basic techniques, more experienced students accidentally used excessive force, causing her to fall face first on the tatami. "Oops, sorry," Kyle said sarcastically after a particularly harsh throw. "I forgot I was dealing with a fragile lady. Maybe you should take up knitting instead." His girlfriend, a girl named Tiffany in a pink kimono, poured water from her bottle onto Meredith's sports bag. Oh, how awkward, though that bag already looked like trash. "Listen, lady," said a guy with a blue belt, leaning over to Meredith during the break. "You don't get it. You're not welcome here. This place is for serious athletes, future champions. They are for housewives who just decided to play karate." Meredith. She remained silent, endured everything, and etched each word deep in her mind. Her daughter's voice echoed inside her head. "Mom, they say I'm not worthy of breathing the same air as them, that my presence offends this room." By the end of the training session, the taunts had reached their peak. Coach David, clearly entertained by the scene, announced a sparring match. "Meredith," he called out to her with a sneer, Since you are so eager to fight, let's see what you can do. Kyle, show our guest what real jiu-jitsu is. The crowd of students came alive. Phones were raised, ready to capture the humiliation. Kyle grinned broadly, cracking his knuckles. "This will be quick," he said to those around him. "I bet $20 she taps out in 5 seconds." 10 seconds, Tiffany interrupted. She looked pretty stubborn. "Maybe we should call an ambulance in advance," joked a guy with a blue belt, and the room erupted in laughter. Meredith silently stepped onto the center of the tatami. Her heart beat steadily, breath calm. She had waited 25 years for this moment. She had not known then what exactly she was waiting for, but now everything made sense. "Kyle," she said quietly, steel emerging in her voice. "Before we begin, I want to ask you something. Do you remember a girl named Emma Collins?" Kyle froze for a moment. Something flickered in his eyes. Then he shrugged. "I don't know any Emma." "Now let's finish this farce," he said. Emma had studied at St. Michael's Academy and trained in jiu-jitsu in central Los Angeles. A striking girl with chestnut hair and green eyes stood there. Kyle's face twitched. Now he remembered. Oh, that poor girl. What about her? I hope she finally understood that sports are not meant for people like her. "She is dead, Kyle." Meredith's words fell into the room like cold daggers. "She hanged herself 3 months ago. Could not endure the relentless humiliation from you and your friends." Silence. Complete silence. Even the music playing from the speakers seemed to fade away. "And what now?" Kyle asked boldly, though a slight uncertainty crept into his voice. "Are you the mothers of that failure? Have you come for revenge?" "I came to teach you a lesson," Meredith replied calmly. "A lesson your wealthy parents forgot to teach you, that every action carries consequences." Kyle laughed, but it sounded strained. "Seriously? You think you can do something to me? I am the state champion, lady. I have a brown belt, and you are just a bitter housewife with a white belt." "Brown belt," Meredith repeated slowly while untying her white belt. "Impressive. Tell me, Kyle, how long have you been training?" 8 years, he answered proudly. "And in that time, I have won more tournaments than you have seen on television." 8 years? Meredith nodded. The white belt fell onto the tatami. She bent down to her worn bag and pulled out a bundle of black fabric. The room gasped. It was a black belt. Not just any black belt. Golden stripes adorned it, indicating the dans. 5 stripes. 5th Dan. 30 years, Meredith whispered quietly as she tied the belt around her waist. I have been training for nearly 30 years. It all began at the age of 14 in Brazil. I studied under Carlos Gracie and personally held the world championship title among women before my injury. Kyle turned pale. The other students stepped back, their mouths slightly open in shock. "They used to call me the White Panther," Meredith continued, tying her belt. "Maybe you have heard this name in documentaries about jiu-jitsu? Meredith White Panther Collins." Coach David dropped his water bottle. He recognized that name. Every serious fighter knew it. The legend of women's jiu-jitsu who vanished from the sport at her prime. "This is impossible," Kyle whispered. "The White Panther is either dead or very old." "I am 43, Meredith said, getting into a fighting stance. Suddenly, her movements shifted. The weary housewife's gait, the rounded shoulders, the uncertainty, all disappeared. Instead, there was the grace of a predator, absolute confidence in every motion. "Now I will show you the difference between true mastery and the arrogance of a boy who believes his father's money makes him invincible." Kyle tried to strike first, but his moves looked slow and clumsy compared to what happened next. Meredith intercepted his attack, executed a classic judo throw, and in the next moment, Kyle was on his back with Meredith's hand gripping his throat in a chokehold. 14 seconds, she said calmly, glancing at the stopwatch on the wall. "That is how long it took me to put down the state champion." Kyle frantically slapped with his sweaty hand, surrendering. His expression was one of defeat. His face turned red from a lack of oxygen. Meredith maintained her grip for a few more seconds while staring into his eyes. "This is for my daughter," she whispered so only he could hear. When she finally released him, Kyle began coughing, gasping for air. The room fell silent. Complete stillness filled the space. Meredith stood up, brushed off her kimono, and looked around at the other students. A fierce fire blazed in her eyes like they had never witnessed before. "Who else wants to learn respect?" she asked. No one dared to respond. Tiffany, who had been mocking an elderly woman just moments ago, now shrank back against the wall, afraid to attract any attention. The boy with the blue belt stared at the floor, unwilling to raise his eyes. "You all know what real jujitsu is?" Meredith continued, addressing everyone present. "It is not about cheap kimonos or daddy's money. It is about discipline, respect, humility, and protecting the weak, not humiliating them." She walked up to Tiffany, who trembled with fear. "Do you remember when you poured water on my bag?" Meredith asked softly. "Do you want to try doing that again?" Tiffany shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. "My daughter wrote in her diary about girls like you," Meredith went on. "About girls who believe their wealth gives them the right to belittle others. She wrote about how you laughed at her clothes and publicly humiliated her in front of the entire class." "I didn't know," Tiffany whispered. "I didn't know poor people have feelings, or that your words could hurt, or that one day you would have to face the consequences. I will have to respond." Meredith turned to Coach David, who stood rooted to the spot, unable to find words. "And you?" she said, her voice edged with icy tones. "Did you witness how they tormented my daughter?" He had seen it but remained silent because their parents paid him a large sum. "Listen," David began. "I could not—" "You could," Meredith interrupted sharply. "You had the chance to stand up and protect that child, to show those spoiled boys what real values mean. But instead, you turned your gym into a stage for bullying." She stepped forward and David instinctively took a step back. "Do you know what is the most tragic thing?" Meredith continued. "Emma was gifted, truly gifted. If given the opportunity, she could have become a great athlete. Yet you crushed her spirit, trampled on her dreams." Her voice faltered at the last words, revealing the pain she had hidden all day. Tears glistened in her eyes, but she quickly regained control. Meanwhile, Kyle stood up, rubbing his neck. His face burned with shame and anger. "Do you think this will change anything?" he snapped. "You believe your theatrics will make us feel guilty? We did nothing illegal. If your daughter was so weak she could not handle ordinary teasing, that is her problem." Meredith slowly turned toward him. Her eyes held something that made everyone in the room shudder. "Ordinary teasing," she repeated softly. "You describe constant torment. The formation of groups on social platforms aimed at humiliating her, spreading rumors, physical harm disguised as harmless teasing. She was seen as a weakling," Kyle insisted stubbornly. "In our world, only the strong survive." "Strong?" Meredith laughed, but that laughter was more terrifying than any scream. "Do you really see yourself as strong? Then let us find out." She assumed a fighting stance again. "Let us have a real sparring match. No rules, no limits. We will see how strong you truly are when the opponent fights back." Kyle hesitated. On one hand, anger and the urge to reclaim his reputation consumed him. On the other hand, he had just received a tough lesson from this woman and understood that even worse injuries could follow. "What are you afraid of?" Meredith teased sharply. "Where is your confidence? Or are you brave only when tormenting defenseless children?" Pride took control. Kyle nodded. "Fine, but when I break a few of your ribs, don't say I did not warn you." A real fight began, and it was nothing like the audience expected. Meredith moved like a dancer, smoothly and gracefully, but each motion was deadly precise. She toyed with Kyle like a cat with a mouse, allowing him to attack before instantly countering, causing him to fall, spin, and grasp at empty air. Kyle was a capable fighter for his level, but the gap between their skills was immense. Meredith seemed to anticipate his thoughts, predicting every move. She turned his own power against him, transforming every attack he made into a trap. After 5 minutes, Kyle was breathing heavily, drenched in sweat. His kimono was torn in numerous places. His face was marked by bruises, while Meredith appeared as if she had only just begun warming up. "Tired?" she asked calmly without even showing signs of exhaustion. "Want to give up?" "Never," Kyle rasped and launched a final desperate assault. Meredith intercepted his move, executed a complex flip, and found herself behind him, locking her hands around his neck in a chokehold. This time, she did not intend to release him quickly. "This is called a python hold," she said quietly, gradually increasing the pressure. 30 more seconds and you will lose consciousness. 1 minute after that and you could suffer permanent brain damage. Kyle struggled fiercely to break free, but Meredith's grip was as unyielding as steel clamps. "Surrender," she whispered in his ear. "Just like my daughter did. Feel what it's like to be defenseless." Kyle patted his sweaty hands in surrender, yet Meredith held on. "Please," he gasped. "Let me go." Emma pleaded too. Meredith spoke softly. "She begged you to leave her alone, to give her a chance, but you never listened." His face turned blue and his eyes rolled back. "Meredith!" Coach David shouted. "Stop now or you'll kill him." Meredith glanced at him with a cold stare. So what? Would the world not be better off with one less sadist? However, after a few seconds, she finally released Kyle. He collapsed onto the tatami. Gasping for air, coughing and sobbing, he whispered as soon as he could speak. "Why? Why didn't you kill me?" Meredith crouched beside him. "Because I am not like you," she said softly. "I do not take pleasure in others' suffering, but I wanted you to experience at least a fraction of what my daughter felt every single day." She stood up and addressed everyone present. "Listen to me closely," she said with a voice so powerful it demanded attention. "Martial arts is not a way to dominate the weak. It is a journey of self-improvement, discipline, and protecting those who cannot defend themselves." Reaching into her bag, she pulled out a photograph. A beautiful girl with chestnut hair and green eyes smiled back from the card. "This is my daughter, Emma," Meredith said, showing the picture. She was 17 years old. Emma had dreams, plans, an entire life ahead of her, but your cruelty took all of it away. Tiffany began to cry. Several other students turned their heads, unable to look at the photo. "She wanted to become an instructor," Meredith continued. "She wanted to open a martial arts school for children from impoverished families. She longed to give them what you deprived her of." Meredith put the photograph away and glanced at Kyle, who was still sitting on the floor, clutching his throat. "You asked if this would change anything?" she said. "Yes, it will. Because now you understand that every action has consequences, and the pain you cause is real. The harm you cause to others can come back to you with great force." She began packing her belongings. "Meredith," her coach David called out. "What now? What will happen next?" Meredith turned to him. "What do you expect? You think I will go to the police and tell them how a group of young athletes beat me up?" She smiled slyly. "No, this was justice, not revenge, a lesson, not punishment." She headed towards the exit, but paused on the threshold. "However," she said without looking back, "if I find out that any of you continue to bully others, if I hear even one case of bullying in this gym again, I will return. And next time, I will not be so merciful." The door slammed shut behind her, leaving the room in complete silence. Kyle slowly stood up. Everyone's eyes were on him, some filled with sympathy, others with judgment. His reputation as an undefeated champion was destroyed forever. "She truly was the White Panther," Tiffany whispered. Coach David nodded. "I checked online while you were fighting," he said. "Meredith Collins was a world champion in 1997 and 1998. She vanished from the sport after a car accident in 1999. 25 years, mumbled the young man wearing a blue belt. For 25 years, she stayed off the mat and still defeated our best fighter. Kyle said nothing. He slowly walked to the locker room. Each step was difficult, not from physical pain, but from the weight of what he had done. In the locker room, he pulled out his phone and searched for articles about Emma Collins' suicide. He read about a girl who earned a scholarship to an esteemed school but could not endure the social pressure. I read through the remarks of her classmates who remembered her as kind, gifted, yet incredibly fragile. For the first time in many years, Kyle Sterling shed tears. Outside, Meredith sat in her old Honda and just stayed there for a while, resting her head on the steering wheel. The adrenaline gradually faded, leaving behind a profound emptiness. She had done what she intended to do. She taught a lesson to those who had driven her daughter to death. But Emma would never come back because of that. The pain in her heart remained just as deep. Meredith took another photo out of the glove compartment. It was a picture of herself with Emma from their high school graduation, both smiling, hugging, dreaming about the future. "I have avenged you, little one," she whispered. "I hope now you can finally rest in peace." She started the engine and drove home to her modest apartment in East Los Angeles. Tomorrow, she had to return to work at a cafe, serving coffee and sandwiches, smiling at customers, pretending life goes on. Yet something had changed. For 25 years, she had hidden her strength, ashamed of her past, letting the world trample over her. Today, for the first time in a quarter of a century, she felt like herself. A white panther, a martial arts legend. Perhaps it was time to stop hiding. Meanwhile, in the Iron Phoenix Hall, the training still had not resumed. The students had dispersed to their homes, each contemplating what had occurred. Some were burdened with guilt, others gained a new understanding of what had happened. True strength revealed itself in a profound way. Kyle Sterling never again tormented those who were vulnerable. The lesson Meredith taught him stayed with him throughout his entire life. He even established a charitable foundation named after Emma Collins to aid children facing bullying. However, that is another tale altogether. The story of the White Panther, who came back to honor her daughter's memory, became a legend in the fighting circles of Los Angeles. People said she appeared whenever the strong mistreated the weak. Rumors spread that she was still nearby somewhere, ready to teach a lesson to those who had forgotten honor and justice. This was a truth only Meredith Collins truly understood. A month later, she opened a modest martial arts school in her neighborhood, offering free classes to children from low-income families, focusing especially on those bullied at school. On the wall hung a photo of a smiling girl with chestnut hair. Beneath it was a plaque, Emma Collins Martial Arts School. Here every child finds protection and support. Every day, as Meredith donned her white kimono before working with the children, she recalled the words her first teacher in Brazil once told her. True strength is not about conquering the powerful. True strength is about defending the weak. Emma would be proud. But the story did not end there. Half a year later, an unexpected visitor came to Meredith's school. Kyle Sterling stood in the doorway holding a box in his hands. He looked much thinner. His eyes were red, as if he had been sleepless for a long time. "Miss Collins?" he spoke softly. "May I have a moment to talk with you?" Meredith nodded and gestured for the children to continue their practice on their own. "What do you want, Kyle?" she asked. He placed the box on the floor and pulled out a stack of papers, photographs, and notes. "This is everything I could find about your daughter. Pictures from the school archives, her grades, the assignments she completed. I wanted you to have these." Meredith picked up one of the photos. Emma was at a school event, a bit shy but smiling. "Why?" she asked. "Because I want her to be remembered for more than just being a victim." She was an amazing girl, intelligent and kind. I read her essays. She dreamed of making the world a better place. His voice cracked. "I haven't slept well since that day. Every night I see her face. I know I could have stopped it, could have protected her instead of joining in the bullying." Meredith said nothing, staring at him. "I started a foundation in her name," Kyle continued. It has already helped 50 children who faced bullying, but it's not enough. It never will be. What do you want from me? Meredith asked. Forgiveness, he whispered. I know I don't deserve it. I know nothing can bring your daughter back, but I have changed. I understand what I did. Meredith was silent for a long time, studying photos of her daughter. Emma was such a kind child, she finally said. She always believed that people can change for the better, even after everything you did to her. She wrote in her journal that she hoped one day you would understand your mistakes. Kyle broke down in tears. She was better than all of us, he sobbed. Yes, Meredith agreed. Much better. She reached out her hand to him. Emma would forgive you. Then I forgive you too, she said. But forgiveness does not mean forgetting. You have to carry this burden your entire life and use it to grow. Kyle grasped her hand tightly, tears still flowing. Thank you, he whispered. I will be worthy of this forgiveness. I promise. After he left, Meredith sat alone in the hall, sorting through pictures of her daughter. In one photo, Emma wore a kimono with a white belt, proudly displaying her first medal. See, little one, Meredith whispered. You were right. People can change, even the worst of them. Outside, the sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the tatami mats. The hall was quiet and serene. Meredith closed her eyes, and for the first time in many months, she felt something close to peace. Emma could finally rest peacefully, and her mother could move forward, helping other children avoid her daughter's fate. The story had ended, but the legacy continued. In every child who found confidence within Emma Collins's school walls, in every moment when the strong protected the weak instead of humiliating them, in every person who remembered the lesson of the White Panther, that true strength comes not from the ability to inflict pain, but from the power to prevent it. And somewhere in a parallel world, 17-year-old Emma Collins, she smiled, filled with pride for her mother and for how the world had changed since her passing. Sometimes, the greatest victories are not won through the strength of fists, but through the power of the heart. The most profound lessons are taught not by words, but through example. The White Panther was hunting again, but now her prey was no longer opponents on the mat. Instead, she targeted injustice, cruelty, and indifference. She never stopped until she found her purpose. Every mother bears a responsibility to her child, and that responsibility does not end with death. However, fate had one more blow waiting for Meredith. 1 year after the school's opening, Detective Michael Rodriguez came to see her. A tall man with tired eyes and graying temples, he looked as if he carried the weight of all the city's unsolved cases on his shoulders. Miss Collins, he said, revealing his badge. I need to speak with you about your daughter. Meredith's heart skipped a beat. What? What about Emma? She had been dead for 1.5 years. Yes, I know. But recently, we arrested someone for a different case, and he shared some information regarding your daughter's death. The detective pulled out a folder of documents. You might want to sit down. Meredith sank into a chair, feeling the ground disappear beneath her. The person we arrested was Bradley Sterling, the father of Kyle Sterling. He is charged with corruption and money laundering, but, in an effort to receive a lighter sentence, started cooperating with the investigation. The detective opened the folder. According to his testimony, the death of your... Meredith's world spun out of control as she realized her daughter's situation was far from a simple suicide. Sterling Sr. discovered that Emma was planning to sue the school and his son due to ongoing bullying. She had gathered evidence, records, photographs, and witnesses that could cost the family millions in damages and shatter their reputation. The detective's voice softened as he explained he had hired a private investigator to dig up dirt on your daughter. This investigator hacked into her social media accounts and private messages, uncovering her struggles with depression and thoughts of ending her life. Meredith felt nausea rising within her. Then, the investigator created fake profiles and began sending Emma anonymous messages, convincing her she was worthless, that the world would be better off without her. He sent links to methods of suicide and forums where people discussed death. No, Meredith breathlessly whispered. No, this cannot be true. Sterling claimed he never intended for her to die, only to scare her into silence. But unfortunately, his plan worked all too well. The detective handed Meredith printouts of these messages. A conversation between the private investigator and your daughter during the week before her death. Read this, he insisted. With trembling hands, Meredith took the sheets and read what shattered her heart utterly. Emma, do you really think anyone will mourn you? Your mother is a waitress. Do you think she wouldn't be happier without an unsuccessful daughter as a burden? Face reality. You will never be good enough for this world. There is a straightforward way to end the pain forever. Every message was a calculated strike against the fragile mind of a teenager. Each word was carefully chosen to push Emma toward the edge of a precipice. They killed my daughter, Meredith whispered, and such agony filled her voice that the detective turned away. They ended her life as surely as if they had thrown her off a rooftop. Mrs. Collins, I understand how heavy this is. No, Meredith snapped, rising abruptly while clutching the printed pages. You do not understand. For a year and a half, I believed my daughter was weak and unable to cope with challenges. I blamed myself for failing to protect her, yet it turns out she was deliberately driven to suicide. Furious tears streamed down her cheeks. What will happen to them? What about Sterling and his son? Sterling Sr. will receive a reduced sentence for cooperating. The private investigator has already vanished. We are searching for him. And Kyle? Technically, he was not involved in this particular part of the plan. That means no one will be punished for my daughter's death. The detective sighed. Proving something led to suicide is incredibly difficult, especially after so much time has passed. Meredith remained silent for a long while, clenching and unclenching her fists. Thank you for telling me the truth, she finally said. Now I know what to do. Mrs. Collins, the detective, placed a hand on her shoulder. I understand how you feel, but do not do anything reckless. The law, the law. Meredith turned toward him, fire blazing in her eyes. The law allowed a wealthy man to order. Psychological torment. The murder of a 17-year-old girl and getting away with it. What kind of justice are you speaking of? The detective left, abandoning Meredith alone with her fury and anguish. She sat in the empty school hall clutching a photo of Emma, feeling a dark and merciless force growing inside her. That evening, Kyle came to her. He often visited the school, helped with the children, trying to make amends. But tonight Meredith saw him with different eyes. You knew, she said without hesitation. Kyle turned pale. What are you talking about? That your father hired a detective? That they pushed my daughter to take her life? I did not know, he whispered. I swear I found out just today when my father called from prison. And what are you going to do about it? Kyle lowered his gaze. I do not know. I have tried contacting the prosecutor, offered to testify against my father, but they said my words would not make a difference. I have no direct proof. So your father will remain unpunished. Meredith, I know how you feel. No, you do not understand, she exploded. You cannot understand because your family are the ones who kill other people's children for money and status. Kyle recoiled as if struck. I am not like him, he said softly. You know I have changed. Changed? Meredith laughed bitterly. You believe a few months of charity can make up for a contract killing? It was not a contract killing. It was murder, she screamed. Meredith, the windows trembled as if struck. They also destroyed my daughter, just as if someone had fired a bullet into her head. The only difference was that psychological wounds left no marks. Kyle cried out, What do you want from me? What can I do? I want justice, Meredith replied in a cold tone. I want your father held accountable for what he did. But how? The law is on his side. Meredith gave him a long, piercing look. Then it is time to forget the law. The next day, Meredith went to the prison where Bradley Sterling was held. A wealthy businessman used to controlling and buying everyone sat behind bulletproof glass in an orange jumpsuit. Mrs. Collins, he said as he picked up the phone. A crooked smile played on his lips. Finally, we meet in person. You ordered my daughter's murder, Meredith said straight away. Murder? Sterling laughed. I killed no one. Your daughter chose her own path after your detective pushed her to it. You cannot prove a thing, and my lawyer has already made a deal with the prosecution. I will be out in 2 years at most. Sterling leaned closer to the glass. You know what is the funniest thing? Your little girl was pitifully weak. A few anonymous messages and she was ready to hang herself. If it had not been my detective, someone else would have pushed her to this sooner or later. Meredith sat motionless, but inside a storm of rage raged. You poor people are all the same, Sterling continued. You think the world owes you something. You are right about one thing, Meredith whispered quietly. Reality can be harsh. She stood up and said, But you forgot one thing, Bradley. Sometimes victims fight back. Sterling smirked and asked, What are you going to do? Sue me? I have the best lawyers in the country. Meredith replied, We shall see, and hung up the phone. During the following weeks, she devoted her time to preparing her case, reaching out to journalists who specialized in investigating corruption among the wealthy. She handed them all the documents the detective had provided alongside her own notes about Emma's bullying. Sterling was rich and powerful, yet Meredith held something he never had: the truth and the determination to seek justice no matter what. The first article appeared in a major newspaper. It was titled, Media Mogul Ordered the Psychological Destruction of a Teenager. The story spread like wildfire. Social networks exploded with discussions, and hashtags supporting Emma became trending. Meredith gave calm and dignified interviews to several TV channels, sharing everything that had happened to her daughter. Every word she spoke hit the mark perfectly. They killed my daughter just like shooting her in the head, she said during a live broadcast. The only difference is psychological bullets leave no marks. The public was outraged. A wealthy businessman who arranged the breakdown of a 17-year-old girl to protect his son's reputation became the symbol of all that is wrong with the justice system. Protests erupted outside the prison. Petitions demanded a case review, and the Sterling Company faced a boycott. The pressure intensified day by day. Then something happened that nobody foresaw. About a month after Bradley Sterling's media campaign began, unable to bear the public disgrace and the horror of realizing his own actions, he truly took his own life in his cell. He left a note confessing to driving the underage Emma Collins to suicide and apologizing to her mother. I never wanted her to die, he wrote. I only wanted to scare her, to silence her. But I realized I had become a murderer. I cannot live with this. Kyle visited Meredith the day news about her father's suicide spread across all the media. This is because of you, he said, not as an accusation, but as a statement of fact. Meredith sat in her living room, clutching a photograph of Emma. I just told the truth to the journalists. People drew their own conclusions. My father would never have ended his life without the public pressure you created. Maybe he just could not handle the weight of what he had done. Kyle sat beside her. What now? He asked. You took revenge. Do you feel better? Meredith stayed silent for a long moment. No, she finally said. Revenge does not bring back the dead. It does not fill the emptiness in the heart. But now I know that justice prevailed. And what about me? Kyle asked. I am also guilty of Emma's death. Meredith looked at him. You have changed. You are trying to atone for your guilt. Your father never admitted he was wrong until the end. That is enough. It is not for me to decide. Emma was a very forgiving person. Perhaps she would have forgiven you too. Kyle shed tears. I miss her, he whispered. I know I have no right, but I often reflect on what she was like. Kind, intelligent. I destroyed something beautiful. Yes, destroyed, Meredith agreed. But now you have the opportunity to build something beautiful in return. She pointed towards the children practicing in the gym. Each one of them could become the next Emma. Your mission is to ensure that this does not happen. A year has passed. Emma Collins's school has grown. Now more than 100 children attend. Kyle became one of the instructors, dedicating his life to fighting bullying. One day, Meredith was visited by a girl about 14 years old. Red-haired and wearing glasses, she had bruises on her arms. "Are you the White Panther?" she asked quietly. "Where did you hear that name?" "On the internet. They say you protect kids who are bullied." Meredith looked at the bruises on the girl's arms. "What is your name?" "Sophie." "Sophie Johnson? Tell me what is happening, Sophie." The girl told a story Meredith had heard many times. Wealthy kids at school, constant harassment, indifferent teachers, desperate parents. "I thought of bad things," Sophie whispered. "Sometimes it feels like the only way out." Meredith hugged the girl. "No," she said firmly. "This is not the way. This is what your tormentors want, for you to disappear. But we will not give them that satisfaction. What will you do? I will teach you how to protect yourself if—" Meredith smiled with a cold expression. "I will visit your school and speak to those who hurt you." For the first time in many months, Sophie smiled. "I promise." That evening, Meredith sat alone in the room, as usual, talking to the photograph of her daughter. "See, little one, your death was not in vain. Every child we save is a part of you that continues to live." She gently touched the picture with her fingers. "I know you would want me to forgive and forget, but I cannot. Some things are unforgivable, yet I can make sure no other child goes through what you did." Outside, the lights of Los Angeles shone brightly, a vast city full of injustice and pain. But in a small room in the Eastern District, a different flame burned. A flame of hope, protection, and a mother's love stronger than death. As long as this light burned, while the White Panther hunted for justice, children could sleep peacefully knowing someone was watching over them. Meanwhile, in a parallel world, 17-year-old Emma Collins looked at her mother with pride, seeing how her pain had transformed into a force protecting others. True love does not end with death. It evolves and becomes something greater, something indestructible. This was Emma's final victory over those who tried to break her.